You are listening to Accents, a radio show for literature, art, and culture. I am your host, Katerina Stoikova, and my guest today is writer and playwright Toni Ann Johnson. Hi, Toni Ann, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well and very excited to talk to you. This is
Thank
your
you.
first appearance on Accents.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. How have you been?
Well, I've been well, considering all that we've all been going through. I think I've been dealing with quarantine pretty well. I think for a lot of writers, in some ways, it's great to not have to take up social responsibilities, engagements, and things to have to be at home and work. That said, I think I could be getting more work done than I am. Some of my time has been spent sort of obsessing about the virus and worrying about it, trying to stay fit, which I've been finding a challenge because I can't go to the gym. But overall, I've been pretty good considering. If you had told me that I was going to be stuck at home for all these months and you asked me how I thought I would handle it, I probably wouldn't have thought I would have handled it as well as I am. I'm existing pretty well. Considering.
Happy to hear about that. And what have you been writing? What have you been working on?
I've been working on revising a novel that I have not shown anybody yet. It is based on something that I wrote many, many years ago that was produced as a play. And I rewrote it as a screenplay. And then I took the screenplay and tried to do a novelization, but I've become actually a novelist. And so a novelization is kind of not exactly what I do anymore. So I've had to really deepen and open up and dig into the book, and it's becoming its own thing. So that's been really interesting. So I've been working on that. I've been working on a longer manuscript that I've also been working on for a long time, that's with an agent who's also an editor. So I've been revising according to her notes, sort of slowly over the last number of years. And now there's one new pass that we're working on now. So I've been doing that also, and prepping to teach this fall. So working on new syllabi and stuff. That's been a lot of work too.
One thing that I heard several times: a lot of work, a lot of work, a lot of work, a lot of work.
Yeah. I do find writing to be a lot of work.
Yeah. And the previous person I just interviewed, I asked him, what is the most important thing you teach your students? What do you want them to remember from your class? And he's like, I want them to remember that writing is work.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It is.
And you keep on saying a number of years here, a number of years there.
Yeah, I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that it went faster, but that's just not been my experience. Like short stories can go faster for me. So I have published a number of short stories, and sometimes I can do a short story in a couple of months. But usually even those take me at least a year to get to where I feel like they're ready. Unless once in a while I get lucky and something just comes out fairly quickly, but I think I'm just a slow writer.
Do you still write Do you still write plays?
So one of the stories in the long manuscript that I'm working on with the agent who's also an editor, that is a collection of separate pieces that all fit together. And one of those pieces, one of those short stories, I have adapted as a play. And I did a performance of it last summer up in Carmel, California. There's a lovely little theater there called the Cherry Center for the Arts. And it's a small, intimate theater. It's about 50 seats. And my director is somebody that I collaborated with years ago, back in the must have been 92 or 93, on a play. And I sent her this, and she helped me adapt it. She's also a dramaturge, and she helped me turn that into a play. So I did it as a one-woman show. It's a 2-character piece, and as a short story, one part is one character, the next part is the next character, and it goes back and forth. And so we put it on stage, and I play both parts. And the parts are based on real events, based on my mother, who's African American. It takes place in the 70s through 2005, and her maid, who was white, in the town that that my parents moved to, where I grew up. And so in the 70s, it certainly wasn't a common thing for an African-American family in a white town to have a white maid. And so that was one of the things that I was looking at in that piece. And also my father is a psychologist, and that maid happened to have mental illness. Before she came to us, she had a nervous breakdown. And when she got out of the hospital, her social worker told her she had to get a job. And part of getting a job was having to ask for a job on the phone. So my mother had put an ad in the newspaper, and she asked my mother, about the job. And my mother told her about the job. And my mom said, so, why do you need this job? And she had been a cleaning lady for a number of years. And she had to admit to my mom that she'd had a nervous breakdown. And my mom felt that other people probably were going to be too intimidated by that to hire her. But because my dad was a psychologist, and she knew that just because you had a nervous breakdown doesn't mean that you can't do a good job as a house cleaner, my mother wanted to hire her. And I think she just kind of bonded with her during that conversation. She told me that she thought it took a lot of guts to have to ask for a job like that. And so for me, when my mom was telling me this story, that was kind of like the spark of their friendship, is that my mom admired her courage to admit that on the phone, and at the same time ask for a job. And so she worked for my mom for about 7 years. And it's about their friendship and about what led to the housekeeper's nervous breakdown, and her relationship with her mother, the housekeeper's relationship with her mother, who was abusive. And then I come into the story, and my mother also was abusive. So we look at sort of abuse from one side, one character, and then from my mom's side. So my mom is very judgmental about the abuse coming from her housekeeper's mother, but at the same time, she's kind of oblivious to the abuse that she's inflicting on me. So that is my long-winded answer. I don't even remember what the question was now.
Well, doesn't matter. Let me ask the next one though. What was it like to act that out? Not even to write it, but to live it out on the stage.
I come from a theater background. I started taking acting lessons when I was 12 at a local place. And then at 14, I was going to a professional acting school in New York City. And I love working out complicated relationships through theater. I just love it. So I think one of the things that was good about it was putting myself in my mother, literally in my mother's shoes.
Yeah.
And also in the housekeeper's place, feeling through her experience. Inhabiting characters is fun for me, even when it's painful. I could be crying through a whole theatrical piece and come off stage like exhilarated. So I can be happy with that even as I'm, weeping. So it's just something that I love to do. I love to express emotion and story, and recreate an authentic experience on stage, and I guess on the page as well. I try to do that.
Was it healing for you?
Maybe, but I've written a novel previous to that piece that was all about a daughter with a narcissistic mother, a narcissistic abusive mother, and that piece was healing. Mm-hmm. So that was a piece where I had to try to understand like what could make someone treat me this way. And so I had to write into a life that would produce narcissism and find empathy for it. And that was healing. When I got to this piece, I'm not sure that the healing was as necessary for me, but you know, maybe I wasn't conscious of it. It probably was, but in my mind, I feel like, oh, I'm already over that. Now I'm just I could just like work on this now. But I would imagine that it was. I mean, I guess every piece is healing in some way. I mean, that's kind of why at least for me, that's kind of what inspires me to write about something, is that I want to kind of turn it around in my head and see it from different sides and try to forgive whatever I haven't forgiven and move on. So yeah, it probably was healing.
And what have you brought for us to read today, Toni?
I brought a short story, and it's called Time Travel. And this is one of the pieces that's in the long book that I mentioned to you, the long piece of the collection of stories that I've been working on for a while. So I'm just trying to get these pages lined up. And you, because you're familiar with one of my stories, you might recognize these people, although they're not named, but you might recognize who these characters are. Okay, so it's called Time Travel. 21 years later, I'll run into you outside the PATH station in Hoboken, in front of the wide green awning that leads down to the trains. Sounds of rumbling below and the din of chatter swirling. You'll yell my name above the noise, saying it like a question, as if you could actually be unsure that it's me. I'll turn and totter on the top step, just in time. Seconds later, I'd be swept into the stream of bodies flowing to the tracks. It'll be shortly after 5 p.m. on a late September weekday, humid and sunny, with air that smells of commuters caught in unexpected high heat. Perspiration will roll down my back and leak between the butt cheeks you used to make fun of. I'll squint against the sun and stare at you. You'll smile with closed lips and brown eyes. That'll be gentler than I remember. Several seconds will pass before you'll say, wow, first time I've ever seen you away from home. Where are you living these days? Manhattan, I'll say. Oh, the big city, you'll say, like it's a truly good thing. I'll nod. I won't ask you anything. I'll look at you and wait. Suits of blue, black, gray, and tan will dodge and whoosh past us in both directions, heels clicking on concrete, huffs and impatient scoffs. We'll be in the way. I'll shield my eyes with one hand and be silent for so long, it'll feel impolite. You'll hold a cheap gray suit jacket over one shoulder, your white collared shirt bearing sweat marks under the arm. You'll smell of obsession for men, alluring and more sophisticated than the Old Spice I used to notice back at the bus stop in high school when you rarely spoke to me. Your chest will be broad and you'll be slim like me, which will mean something because 21 years earlier, we were chubby 6-year-olds foraging together for ding-dongs and Oreos my mother hid deep in the pantry so we wouldn't overeat. We'd find them and eat them all. And that thrill was a bond we shared. But being connoisseurs of Nabisco cookies and Hostess snack cakes and being buddies from the time we could crawl never made our bond as strong as the one you shared with every kid in the neighborhood but me. Someone will bump into you and you'll fall into me and grab my arm before I lose my balance on the top step. Sorry, you all right? You'll ask. I'll say, fine, thanks, and take my arm back. That day, 21 years after I lost you, I'll be wearing a tomato red kufi atop unapologetically kinky hair. Wild kinks I tamed the soul out of when I lived across the street from you. Hoping straight hair would make me pretty and more like everyone else. But you called me an ugly, bubble-butted N-word at the bus stop. Sorry, I've lost my place. I won't smile. I won't be warm. I'll forget any mean things I may have said back at the bus stop. I probably said some because I will remember how you winced at the mention of your fat mom, crippled father, and port wine-stained birthmarked baby sister. My tongue, sharpened on figurative and literal sticks and stones hurled at me by neighborhood bullies, must have pierced your soft spots sometimes too. Yet you'll look at me that day with a tenderness that insists cruel words never pass between us. Your dark hair will be short, your skin clean shaven, clear, the spots of adolescence healed and faded. Your face will flush and your eyes will brighten the way they used to shine when you were my round-cheeked running buddy. You'll look deep into me with such warmth that against my will, you'll begin to melt the icicles that numbed me inside. My name, when you say it, will sound like songs from playtimes past. In your eyes, I'll catch a glimpse of us singing on swings, flying above the grass where we found four-leaf clovers. You'll invite me into a little chamber of your heart where you saved us, but I won't go. I won't be ready to remember how to get there. There'll be no mention of what happened to us or what didn't happen that should have. You'll sing my name again, a young boy's sweetness shining out of your grown man's face. And you'll say, you were my first best friend. I'll know that you're telling me you're sorry. You didn't mean to hurt me, you were just a kid. I'll nod politely and shrug off your words of apology. I'll carry my bubble butt and my baggage down the stairs, catch my train, and move on with my life. In another 21 years, I'll be middle-aged and softer, inside and out. I'll remember how you said my name that day and the way you looked at me with affection. I'll transport myself back to the path station in front of the stairs, trains rumbling below, bodies whooshing by, and I'll be kinder to you. I will. Because by then, I'll know that love is the only feeling left once enough time has passed. Okay.
Thank you, Toni. I
Oh,
was
thank you.
nothing short of amazing.
Oh, thank you. I had my pages all here, but I didn't use them properly.
What you did was beautiful, and thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for choosing this passage. And yes, I'm familiar with the characters and so happy to have learned more about their relationship.
Good. Thanks.
And about you, I know that you teach at the University of Southern California. What do you teach there?
I teach screenwriting. So I started off as an actress, but then I sort of fell into screenwriting and did that for a number of years before I started working on fiction. So I teach screenwriting. I teach writing the feature to undergraduate students, and I've been teaching writing the short film to undergraduate students for a few years. And this coming semester, I will be teaching graduate students the same thing, writing the short film.
Okay, and I have a question for you in this case. What is the most important thing you teach your students of screenwriting? And if there is one thing you want them to remember.
Well, it's actually three things. So
Perfect.
And I've only been teaching this particular, what I'm going to share with you for the last year since I had it articulated for me. And it's three questions. Where do you come from? Why are you writing the things that you're writing? And how do you know who you are? And those questions for me help a young writer, a person starting out, understand that as we're writing, it's part of it is self-discovery. And I didn't understand that until years later, but when I looked back at my work, I saw that even if I wasn't writing something autobiographical, the elements of my autobiography are in the work. So for example, race and class comes up in my work because I was Black in a working class environment where my family wasn't working class. My father had a PhD. And even when I wasn't writing about that consciously, unconsciously, those elements were filtering in. And so for me, I think the most important thing that I can teach them is to pay attention to what they're writing about, to understand why they're writing about what they're writing about. And if they want their work to be authentic, to tap into something that comes from them, even if it's not autobiographical, just something of their real essence. Because I think, especially for screenwriters at USC who are, excited to come to LA and excited to break in to the movie business, often they think that the best thing they can do is something super commercial that has nothing to do with them, that has nothing to do with their own experience, that it's just not intrinsically their voice or them. It's what they think will sell. And that might be great once you're working and you're making a living and you have to do that. But I think what helps your voice stand out is authenticity. And so that's what I think I'm trying to get across to them, is how to be authentic.
Can you remind me about the third question, please?
Oh, I don't know. Is that my job?
The third question that you ask your students.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking me a question about myself. How do you know who you are?
How do you know
what
who
is
you
it
are?
that shows you who you are? So I think that that the work answers that. So when you write a book or you write a screenplay, if it's actually authentic, it's showing you what you believe about the world. So a screenplay, the subtext, the emotional subtext in a screenplay is there's often a moral argument to it. And that moral argument is the writer's belief about how to best be in the world. And they might not be conscious of that when they're going into it, but that is what comes through. It's like you're telling a story and there's some sort of morality to it. And ultimately at the end, whoever wins or whatever wins basically is your idea of what's the right way to be. what's the right way to exist? And so when I ask that question, how do you know who you are? That is, I think that's what that's getting at. Oh, and if I didn't mention this, I need to mention this. I didn't come up with those questions. I discovered those questions when Charles White, a local artist in Los Angeles, had an exhibit. He passed away, I think, last year, and there was a short documentary about him. And he was a visual artist, and he taught for many years. And his students said that these were the questions that he asked them in the beginning of their semester. And I just adapted those questions for writers, but they were originally for visual artists. So it's, where do you come from? Why are you doing the work that you're doing? And how do you know who you are? And I think it's the same thing for a painter, you know. Your work shows you who you are. What you come back to over and over, what you paint, what you put on the canvas, it shows you who you are.
Thank you so much for that insight, Toni. And I'm very thankful for those questions. And I'm sure that our listeners will love to know about them and to think about them and to apply them to their own form of art.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck with all your projects. And well, I say things through the virtual mic and the universe listens. So I wish for me and for the listeners of Accents that in not too distant future, writer Toni Ann Johnson is back on the show holding 2 new books in both hands. Those books that
yes.
she has been working for years on.
Thank you, Katerina. I accept that, and I share that vision and put that out into the universe. Yes. I look forward to being back.
Yeah. Good luck to you, Toni Ann.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Bye.